Hi folks, Josh Knight the First here with another episode of Writer Rebuild, coming to you with episode 36 of the series. Let's get right into it. So this week on Kamen Rider Build, we see that things are still getting more and more dire, and things are leveling up even more as far as the difficulty for our heroes, but at the same time there's some really good things going on, and I hope I have enough time to get to all of them. But first, let's go ahead and start off with the fact that we're still a little bit screwed. And if you didn't know we're screwed, the new opening that we've gotten will remind you of that. I appreciate how in the first couple of seconds it shows Evolt there as this overlying threat that's interspliced in between shots of the different riders, but we still have shots of Itsurugi turning into Bloodstark. I'm not sure why they still kept that in there. Maybe eventually Itsurugi will transform into Bloodstark and be a good guy to fight against Evolt, who knows. But let's not worry about that right now, let's get right into the nitty gritty here. So as we saw last episode, we see that Evolt has gotten everything that he needs and is pulling all of the energy out of Pandora's box, since apparently that's exactly what it is. It's his energy that's been stored in there this entire time. Now what we see is that he didn't quite get what he wanted. We see that he pulled out this item out of Pandora's box, which we now know is called the Evolt Trigger. This apparently is what will allow him to achieve the ultimate form that he's been trying to get back, and this whole episode actually ties into his entire plan as to how he's going to get there. Now unfortunately, because he can't access it right away, this is that little ray of hope that we've been hoping that the writers will get. Now there was something I was wondering about a couple of weeks back as to why Vernage was so weak compared to Evolt this entire time. Well, this episode actually seeks to answer that question. So Vernage saving Sento from certain destruction gives us this very large expositional plot dump as to what exactly everything is leading up to now. We learn that 1, Evolt isn't Martian, he's some other life form from space that ended up on Mars and just brought along the power of destruction and just wantonly killed everybody. So that answers one question about who Evolt is as far as being from another planet, I guess. 2, we know that the final form that he will eventually access, because we've kind of seen it in the scans, is the thing that was allowing him to suck all of the life off of Mars into this black hole projection, which of course makes sense if you already have read those scans. But again, not to get ahead of myself, we see that this whole time Evolt has actually hidden his power, his soul, which was separated from his body by Vernage there on Mars, and hid it within Pandora's box. This whole time he's been seeking out a way to get back to that final form, and the way to do that was to get the essence of 60 full bottles and use that to open up Pandora's box. The way he got the bottles was by using some of Itsurugi's memories and using that to fill up the bottles. The third thing we learn is that Vernage is actually the one who possessed Misora. We were thinking, well, maybe she picked up the bracelet at some point. No, she attached herself to Misora, and she's actually the one who took the essence away from the bottles. That way we could lead to the current plot as it is now. Now after this plot dump, we see that Vernage passes out because admittedly she says that it took a lot of power to do all of those things, and it probably took just as much power to explain those things. Now this is going to be another very heavy episode, and we need some comic relief, and much like last week, we see that the bulk of the comic relief is provided here by Kazumi. Now as a character, we very much need Kazumi right now, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for any of the other characters to be making jokes right now. Because he's the dedicated comic relief character right now, it's okay for him, but at the same time, he's going to have his development later on in the episode. But I do appreciate how there's a little bit of a throwback to an Austin Powers joke about he has an outer inner monologue and talking about just exactly how he feels about Misora. Now aside from being the comic relief which we did need, we needed that little breather, we see that he's still dealing with some things, and he's got some unsettled business with Gentoku, specifically the fact that he was the one who took Akaba's life so many episodes ago. I appreciate that even though he challenges Gentoku to what's essentially a squash match, it doesn't really matter in the end, because this whole time we see that his motivation is still thinking about, well, what would Akaba do if he was still here, since he seemed to be the more sensible of the Hokuto trio. In that, we see he's still trying to think of, how can I be a better person? If my friend was here, what would he tell me? And he's using that to push himself forward, telling Gentoku, look, I'm motivated by my home, by my family. What motivates you? This is what's motivating me, and to that end, I fought you, I haven't exactly forgiven you, I don't know if I ever will, but I think the best thing for us to do is actually work together. I appreciate that a character like Kazumi can be so multifaceted, that he can be funny and carefree one minute and actually kind of loving in the way that he's essentially pursuing Misora, but at the same time he's still dealing with a great loss, and he's actually not letting it weigh him down so much as pushing him forward to be a better person. Now as to whether or not Gentoku will rise to the challenge, we're not sure yet. He's still thinking about his father, and he still hasn't quite come to terms with being a full-fledged hero, despite all of the things that he's done up to this point. Now on the other end of things, dealing with Sento trying to figure out how exactly he's going to beat Evolt and get Ryuga back, we see that he's found a way to essentially use a panel of Pandora's box to become the power-up item that he needs. Now we know that this will eventually turn into the thing that's going to be sold to us starting next month, but for right now it's still still very dangerous and very easy for him to lose himself to wanting to be a good guy, but not really caring so much about how it affects him. Even more so, it seems that it's not really entering into Sento's mind just how this will affect everybody around him. It makes sense to be a sacrificial hero, but at the same time, you have to think about what life you're giving up in order to save other people and what you mean to them. This is highly exemplified in the conversation between Misora and Sento. Again, some amazing acting coming out of Misora. I know every week I say that I really like her acting, but this week I really felt like my heart was breaking for the character, telling Sento, look man, have you ever thought about how it's going to affect us? How much it would affect us to think maybe we could have talked you out of doing this self-destructive behavior? As somebody who's gone through something like that, that's absolutely a real thing, and it's absolutely coming across from the screen to the audience, at least for myself, that Misora believes this, that she doesn't want to lose what little family she has left. Now Sento, he's still giving her lip service. He's still telling her, look, I'm the only one who's got to do this. I've got to clean up my own mess. But at the same time, he still quite hasn't gotten it yet. He still thinks that the best thing to do is lie to Misora's face, and she knows he's lying. At this point, Misora's been lied to so many times that lies just don't work on her. And at the same time, she knows that he's probably right. He's the best guy to do this. I said this on Twitter earlier this week, but for me, there's something very realistic about a character who relies so heavily on his intellect and still seems to come up short every time he comes up with a new plan. In that sense, Sento, for me, has become a very realistic writer, and I'm actually very much rooted in seeing whether or not he can succeed against Evolt. Now, if Evolt wasn't going to make things worse in this episode, it seems that Nanba is hell-bent on doing that as well. Now that he's been bolstered up by Evolt's new power, and Evolt selling him on the fact that, hey, I'm doing this for you, this is all for the sake of Nanba Heavy Industries, there's actually a bigger purpose to this, and I'm actually very interested in the way the show is starting to depict Nanba as he's showing himself to the public. To that end, I actually had to watch the episode several times over to see just exactly if I was seeing what I thought was being portrayed in Nanba's characterization. So we see that he's decided, of course thanks to Evolt's recommendation, that he should just go ahead and declare himself the winner and occupy Toto as it stands. Now, in the middle of this address that he gives to the audience there, or really to everybody watching at home there in Toto, he starts talking as though he's Mito, the person that he's portraying himself to be, but about halfway through his speech, he drops the Mito accent and starts speaking as Nanba. Now, it's not just the way he's saying things, but the word choice that he's using and the scene that follows immediately after that. We see that he's starting to talk with more of a gravelly voice, as we've seen him talk with before, but it's the fact that he's saying he's putting Japan first, saying, why don't we show the world what made in Japan really means? We're going to be the #1 superpower. We'll take on all comers. And he's doing this in this very kind of odd delivery, and immediately after that we see that Evolt has to comment, oh, looks like he's ready to start a world war. Now, I don't know about you guys, but it's my opinion that this isn't an accident, that this is actually the show's take on certain world leaders that are out there right now who don't really care about what anybody thinks of them, want to promote nationalism, and don't really think anybody should stand up to their military might. That actually makes the story a lot more interesting to see, in that not only are we dealing with a villain who's thought so far ahead there's really no stopping him on that end, but we're also dealing with somebody who's risen to power, lying that they're a politician but they're really not, they're a businessman, and then from there they're willing to go to war with anybody just to promote their brand. I think that's something that I've never really seen in Tokusatsu before, where it's gotten this inherently political while still being a kids show. And to that end, not only with Nanba, but also with Evolt, two of them almost equally, I want to see them fail, because on a certain visceral level, you don't want to see people like this actually succeed. You don't actually want to see the bad guy get away, and I think that's actually something they're trying to get across to their audience, that they want to foster these feelings of, hey, we want to see good, we want to root for the hero, not just there in the show, but in real life as well. If we see any of that kind of behavior, we want to be better people, we want to be like the hero. But at least as far as the show's concerned, we have to actually get to that point, which means Evolt has to be defeated. So to get there, Sento is using this new device, which he's placed into the build driver, to go ahead and rapidly raise his power level, hazard level, up drastically to a point that isn't safe for a human, and Evolt sees this. Now, unfortunately, in the end, this is all for naught. It's kind of a tit for tat of, oh, I planned this ahead, no, I planned this ahead, and the bottom line is that Evolt still won out. He's actually possessed Sento, now using the rabbit bottle that he's essentially pulled out of Sento to make this new form. He's now reached 3 forms here, which is kind of interesting in that if you look at it, it's kind of the Chinese zodiac, the way he's gone from snake to dragon to rabbit. It's interesting like that. I don't think we'll get Tiger next, but that would be cool if we did. And unfortunately, that's actually where the episode ends again, on another downer note. The villain is still winning here. Now, I think this is really interesting in that we're seeing a series where it's so clear that the villain is winning on multiple levels. Now, I know that last year in Kamen Rider Exade, with the introduction of Kamen Rider Cronus, he had a lot of hacks powers, and to that end, yes, he was winning, but it wasn't quite the same thing as here where he was winning on multiple levels. Really, it was just, oh, you're just cheating. And here, it's not as much cheating as somebody really having thought things out. That's one thing. And then two, they're actually using other people working around them to further their goals. Overall, I have to admit that I'm really invested in Build, and I have to keep watching. I need to keep watching at this point because I need to see the hero get that victory. So really for myself as a fan, that I can kind of intake that into my own life and feel that motivate me as well, since we can do that with any sort of media. We can use that to be better representations of ourselves. But those, of course, are my thoughts on the episode. I want to hear what you guys thought in the comments below, so let's go ahead and talk about a few things. First and foremost, Nanba. Do you think it's possible that his portrayal there in Kamen Rider Build is actually meant to reflect world leaders that are out there right now? Secondly, Sento. Is it actually okay for him to continually shrug off his safety for the sake of others, or he should actually take more care of himself? And thirdly, Kazumi, or rather Misora. Just how long will it take before she notices how much of a crush Kazumi has on her? You tell me in the comments below. And of course, during the week, you can always talk to me on social media. On Twitter, I'm at JoshKnight1st. This has been episode 36 of Rider Rebuild. For episode 36 of Kamen Rider Build, Evolt Hunts Planets. I'm Josh Knight the First. I'll see you guys again next episode.